Hello, darlings. It's Megan with College Uncomplicated's Financial Aid Bootcamp. So today we're gonna do something a little bit different. I gave Matt the day off so I could show you how to fill out the FAFSA. So I understand filling out the FAFSA can be really scary and daunting sometimes, especially if you haven't dealt with reported taxes or income before. So that's why you need to try and fill it out as soon as possible. That gives you some leeway in case you make some mistakes, and then you can ensure that your FAFSA actually gets turned in before any deadlines. So remember, the FAFSA opens up every year on January 1st. And some aid is on a first come first served basis. And you and your parents may be thinking, well, how can I fill out the FAFSA if I don't get my W-2s or anything like that until later in the year? Well, don't worry. You can fill out the FAFSA using last year's tax returns in order to make an estimate. Once you actually file for this year though, you can go back into the FAFSA portal online and then use the IRS data retrieval tool in order to get this year's information onto the FAFSA. I know it sounds like a lot, but I'll explain it. Another good thing to do is have the FAFSA on the web worksheet up while you're working on the FAFSA, and I can show you where to find that. So if you go to the federalstudentaid.ed.gov and simply search worksheet, it comes up 2014-2015 FAFSA on the web worksheet. What's really good about this worksheet is that it explains questions in more depth, but then it also tells you the exact lines on your 1040 that are the answers to specific questions on the FAFSA, so it makes it a little bit faster. And thirdly, dependent students who are filling out the FAFSA, which is likely the majority of students, may want to schedule a time to sit down with their parents to fill out the FAFSA together, because you'll need information from both of you as well as both of your signatures in order to submit it. I'd also like to say I am not magic, okay? So there are a ton of different circumstances that people can be in, and I'm not going to explain every single one, but if you have questions about your specific circumstances, there are tons of people that you can ask. For instance, you can go to FAFSA.GOV and simply click on their help option, and they actually have a really good fact page. But then also you can go to contact us and actually talk to a Federal Student Aid Information Center representative. You can call them at 1-800-4FED-AID or chat with them online or email them at federalstudentaidcustomerservice@ed.gov. I'd also suggest trying to talk to your high school counselor or financial aid counselors at the colleges that you're planning on applying to. Okay, well, that's enough disclaimers. The first step when you fill out the FAFSA, and probably the most important, is gathering all of your information. So students and parents of dependent students will need their income tax return, their W-2s or 1099s, any untaxed income, and any investments or assets. And realize, if you don't have all of this stuff, the FAFSA online will not let you go forward if you can't answer a question. So you need to make sure you have all of this with you on hand when you start filling it out. Otherwise, it's gonna take forever. What I suggest is that you have 4 folders, 2 for the student, 2 for the parent, and then each one has an income and expenses folder and has an assets folder. But let's kind of step back and kind of explain what all of those things are. First off, I want to focus on income and expenses. Let's talk about different types of tax forms that you may not be used to. The first one is a W-2. A W-2 is a form that an employer must send to an employee and the IRS in order to report that employee's annual wages, as well as the taxes that were withheld from their paycheck during that year. So if you worked at a company and had taxes taken out of each of your paychecks, that means that you will get a W-2, which reports how much you made over that entire year. The next form is a 1099, which is kind of like a W-2, but it's what employers use to report untaxed income. So this likely will affect a lot of students because seasonal work is usually contract labor that doesn't have taxes taken out. So if you were getting paid your full paycheck and no taxes were taken out, you will more than likely get a 1099. That means that when you file your tax return, you will more than likely have to pay taxes as well because you didn't have it being taken out of your paycheck. So the next form that you need to know is a 1040. It is what an individual uses to report their income and taxes paid to the IRS. When people say tax return, this is the form they're talking about. The government uses this form in order to figure out how much taxes you've paid, whether you owe more, or if you've actually overpaid when that amount was taken out of your paycheck each time, and if you actually get money back. Also note that there are different versions of this form. There's the 1040, the 1040A, and the 1040EZ. It's just shorter, more condensed forms for particular circumstances. Also, these forms need to be filed with the government by April 15th of every year. Now, the next thing to kind of uncomplicate that's still under income and expenses, but not necessarily what you're being paid for, like for work, is other taxable and untaxed income. Other taxed income that isn't included on your 1040 that you need to know for your FAFSA includes wages, pensions, capital gains, interest, dividends, annuities, unemployment compensation, alimony received, rent collected, and business income. You also need to consider some types of untaxed income. This includes workers' compensation, welfare benefits excluding food stamps, housing and food allowances, child support received, untaxed Social Security benefits, untaxed income from pensions and annuities, veterans non-education benefits, tax-exempt interest income, deductible payments made to retirement plan, and earned income credit. And lastly, there are some other expenses you may want to report that reflect unusual family financial circumstances. For instance, if something happened recently, like a parent lost a job or something like that, you need to have records of that in order to prove that this has happened and it affects your financial standing, even though it's not reflected in your income. Some other examples include high unreimbursed medical and dental expenses, unusually high dependent care cost, usually due to a special needs sibling or child or an elderly parent, death, divorce, salary reductions, job loss, and private K-12 tuition. Okay, so all of that is under income and expenses. The next thing we want to talk about, our other folders, are our assets. The first major and obvious one is the value of any cash, savings, and checking accounts under the student or the parent's name. Next is the net worth of all parents' and students' investments, including stocks, bonds, CDs, money market funds, mutual funds, commodities, trust funds, education IRAs, state-based college savings plans, and real estate holdings, including rental properties and second homes. You do not need to include any retirement plans or the value of the home that you are currently living in. Okay, whew, that was a lot, but now let's actually start filling out the FAFSA. The first thing you want to do is go to FAFSA.gov. Realize it's FAFSA.gov, not FAFSA.com or FAFSA.org. They will take you to the wrong site, okay? It needs to be FAFSA.gov. Also realize if they ever ask you anything for payment or anything like that, you are on the wrong site. This is a free application. So the first thing you want to do is go to the PIN site. You need to apply for a PIN in order to fill out the FAFSA. It's basically a special code that allows you to say that you are who you are. It's a specialized signature, essentially. So you're gonna click here, apply for a PIN. Another thing to note is that in order to apply for a PIN, you need a Social Security number. Also, if you're a dependent student, your parent will need to co-sign the FAFSA, and therefore they will need to sign up for a PIN, and they need a Social Security number. If your parents don't have a Social Security number, what you can do is print the signature page and then mail it to the Department of Education once you're done with the FAFSA, and then they will approve it. So apply for a PIN, whatever. Just click next, and then you fill out your personal information. I am going to block all of this because I don't want you all to know. You fill out your Social Security number. So some personal information, your name, and then your date of birth. Now your mailing address. And then you need to fill your email address. Realize that this is the email address that your student aid report will be sent to. So it needs to be something that you check regularly. And then you can also pick the number of your pen. So make sure it's something that you remember. If you forget, it's really easy to get it back, and they can send you a new pen or something like that, but save yourself the extra time. Then you submit your pen application. They're really big on making sure you don't share your pen. So and then I submit my application. Cool. So now I'm going to go back to the FAFSA website and start a new FAFSA. And right next to it I have the FAFSA on the web worksheet. It can help you a lot. I mean, I already kind of explained it, right? So log in. So first name, last name, social security number, and birth date. There you go. So welcome. And I want to start for 2014-2015. So if you're applying to college right now and you want to go, you know, once the 2014 semester starts in the fall, you need to fill out the FAFSA for the 2014-2015 year. Okay, so I'm going to create a password. So we have our introduction page. If you have any questions, you can always come back here. But I want to move on. So the first thing that you're going to fill out is your basic student demographics. Okay, so you have your last name, your first name, your middle initial, social security number, your birth date, male or female, and then your permanent mailing address, so the places that you know that you'll get your mail from. I know some people move around a lot. And I'm in Texas. So, have you lived in Texas for at least 5 years? Yes. Probably asking about your residency status there. Your telephone number. I don't know why they would call you, but email address again. Actually, this is probably the one that has to do with the SAR, but you probably should have both of them be the same email address. Marital status, single. All the single ladies, all the single ladies. Do you have a driver's license information that you can provide? Yes. And then you can put your driver's license number. 235. Remember that would be crazy. Okay, so you fill out all that information, and next. Okay, and then student eligibility. This basically is the part that is asking the questions to figure out whether or not you actually qualify for financial aid. If you're a citizen, you pretty much do. It gets a little bit more complicated when you have immigrated to the United States. Also, if you're an undocumented student, you're not eligible for financial aid, which we've talked about in some of our, or federal financial aid, I should say. And we've talked about that in some of our other episodes, and we'll go further into that. I'm actually wanting to do an undocumented student series to talk about your specific options for financial aid. So, are you a citizen? Yes. When you begin college in the 2014-2015 school year, what will be your high school completion status? So, for most people, you'll have an high school diploma. When you begin the 2014-2015 school year, what will be your grade level? Okay. So for most people, it's going to be never attended college, so first year. So if you're applying to college, that's what they're talking about. It doesn't matter if you maybe have done dual classes at maybe a community college while you're in high school. This is talking about whether or not you've actually been enrolled full-time at a university. So if you're a senior in high school and that's your situation, you need to put never attended college. The other options are likely for students who are filling out the FAFSA again during their other years, because you have to fill it out each year in order to reflect, your income status. When you begin the 2014-2015 school year, what degree or certificate will you be working on? So most will be the first bachelor's degree. Are you interested in being considered for work study? Most people say yes. I don't know why you wouldn't say yes. Will you have your first bachelor's degree before July 1st, 2014? High school completed by parent 1. Mine, it's just high school. Or highest school, not high school. Highest school completed by parent 2. Mine is also high school. Okay, next. What is the name of your high school? I'm gonna put mine. Probably gonna blur this out too. Okay, so you just fill out the basic information for your high school and locate it so they know what high school you were actually in. So the next step is actually to list the universities that you're applying to. And you have to be really strategic about this, because I've actually read reports to where universities are looking at the order in which that you place universities on the FAFSA in order to figure out how much you want to go there, and therefore how much they should offer aid to you, because they know the likelihood of you going there or not. Just because they've realized that people tend to put their favorite universities first and their least favorite last. So what I would say is either rank your universities from most favorite to least favorite, or do it in alphabetical order. I'm not gonna do a lot just because I already went to college. I don't need to figure this out, but just add a few. I'll add Austin. I'll add the schools that I applied to, actually. So University of Texas, or some of them that I applied to. So University of Texas at Austin, add. So that's going to be my top choice. Okay, so that's a good thing to note. Literally the first one that you type in is going to be at the top of your list. So rank them from most favorite to least favorite. Okay, so I picked my 3 schools, and I'm going to scroll down and click next. Okay, so now what you have to do is pick your housing plan. So all of mine were actually, I would say, on campus. I'm actually going to do a video on this just because I think it's really important to live on campus at least 1 year. It really depends on your personal situation. It can be less expensive to live off campus. I just really think that the camaraderie that comes from living on campus is really helpful, especially with like making friends and stuff. So anyway, I should say your options are on campus, with a parent, and then off campus. So yeah. Okay, so now it asks about dependency status, and realize that dependency is something different than what we're talking about, like when we're talking about taxes. If your parents claim you as a dependent on their taxes or something like that, it's completely irrelevant. That has nothing to do with the FAFSA. The FAFSA actually has a very specific particular definition of a dependent student and independent student. It has very specific parameters, and that's what these questions are asking essentially. So we'll do a video, I think it's our next video in the series, about whether or not or how to determine if you're a dependent or an independent student. So pretty much, let's go over these real quick, but I'm not going to go into too much depth because of that. So were you born before January 1st, 1991? I wasn't, but I'm going to say that I was, since most students will, and it affects your dependency status, your age, basically. So I want to file as a dependent student so y'all can see what it's like. As for today, are you married? No. At the beginning of 2014-2015 school year, will you be working on a master's? No. Do you now have or will you have children who will receive more than half of their support from you? No. Do you have dependents? Blah, blah, blah. No. Are you currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces? No. Are you a veteran? No. At any time since you turned 13, were both your parents deceased? No. As determined by a court in your state of legal residence, are you or were you an emancipated minor? No. So determined by a court, are you or were you in legal guardianship? No. Were you homeless after July 1st, 2013? No. Okay. So pretty much if you answer yes to any of those questions, you're considered an independent student. And we'll talk about what that means later. Okay, next. Dependency status results. Based on your answers, you're considered a dependent student. Right. Therefore, you need to include your parents' information, and I will because I can. If you're unable to, you can still fill out the FAFSA if you're a dependent student but can't fill out your parents' information. You just have to talk to your school specifically about whether or not they will grant you aid in that instance. So the only time when you're able to not fill out the parental information and for sure get federal aid is if you are considered an independent student based on those prior questions. Okay, so next. Okay, so the next step if you're a dependent student is to fill out your parents' information essentially. The only thing is that with the changing tide of what is considered a family or parents, etc., we really need to kind of look at the definition of what the FAFSA considers a parent. Basically, the rule of thumb is that if your parents are married, you include both of their information. If you have parents who have separated or are divorced, you include the parents' financial information that you live with more than 50% of the time. So the parent that you live with most, that is the parent that you would include the information for. But if that parent has remarried, if you live with a parent that has been divorced and they remarry, then you need to include your parents' information as well as your step-parents' information. Also, if your parent has just always been single or if they're widowed, you only include one parent's information. On December 13th, the US Supreme Court actually struck down the third section of DOMA, which defined marriage as a union between a man and a woman, and defined spouse as somebody of the opposite sex. With this ruling, the Department of Education has actually recognized same-sex marriages for students and parents who were legally married in a state that recognizes that. No matter where you live, no matter where you go to school, if you're legally married, the FAFSA will actually recognize that same-sex marriage. So that's really cool. Okay, so now I'm going to fill out my parents' demographic information. So my parents are married. So when did your parents get married? They got married in 11 of 1980 or something like that. I don't know my parents' wedding anniversary. Your father's social security number. What is your father's last name? Jackson. What's your father's first initial? So then your father's birth date. And then what is your mother's social security number? What is your mother's last name? Okay, and first initial. And then your mother's birth date. Okay, and then your parents' email address. Have your parents lived in Texas for at least 5 years? Yes. Or if they've lived in whatever state you're in. Your parents' number of family members in 2014, 2015. Okay, and then if you have special circumstances, this calculator helps you figure out household size. So my immediate family members are 4. How many people in your parents' household will be in college basically during that year? So again, pretending I am, and then my younger sister, 2. Next. So for 2013, have your parents completed their IRS income tax return or another tax return? So this is a very important part because you can either, what I would suggest, like I said at the beginning of the video, is that you need to basically fill this out before their tax returns have actually been filed. So if you're filling it out early before they've gotten their W-2s from work or have filed their tax return, you would say will file, and therefore you can fill out an estimate. But if you are filling out a little bit later, if they've already turned in their tax return, you say already completed. You can say not going to file, but I'm pretty sure that means that you can't fill out your FAFSA because you have to have a tax return in order to fill out your FAFSA. So will file. For 2013, what will be your parents' tax filing status according to their tax return? So you'll need to talk to your parents about this. Mine are married, they filed jointly, so it just depends. You need to talk to them about it. Okay, next. Okay, so now we're on to the big part where you fill out the financial information for your parents and yourself. First thing you should realize is that if you did click will file, like I just said, you're gonna have to provide estimates. You can use your prior tax return, blah, blah, blah. But if you've already filed for this year and your 1040 is already sent to the IRS for both you and your parents, you can use this interesting tool called the IRS data retrieval tool. Basically what that means is that they import the information from the IRS into the FAFSA. If you're able to do this, this is definitely the way you should go. It's so much easier than filling it out manually, and it's much more accurate. But realize you have to wait until you file, obviously. So best route, do your estimates manually so you can apply early for financial aid and then update it later once you've actually filled out and filed your 1040 and stuff. I'm going to provide estimates just to go over some of these questions. Pretty much the stuff that I say is probably just going to be completely made up, but whatever. So what type of income tax return will your parents file for 2013? So you can choose the 1040, the 1040A or 1040EZ, a foreign tax return, or a tax return with Puerto Rico, etc. So they just want to know what specific 1040 you use, so they can basically provide you a step-by-step process on where to look on the 1040 to fill out some of this information. So I'm going to say just a regular 1040. So what was your parents' adjusted gross income for 2013? This amount is found on IRS form 1040 line 37. So see, so I actually pulled up a 1040 here. So this is what a 1040 looks like. So what was it that they were saying? So 1040 line 37. So here, so this basically your adjusted gross income. So right here, so the total, I don't know, for my parents, let's just say Please excuse my cat. Hiya. How much did your father slash stepfather earn from working in 2013? This amount is your stepfather's portion of IRS Form 1040, lines 7, 12, and 18. So you go over here to your 1040. So it's going to be line 7, wages, salaries, and tips. What else? 12 and 18. 12, business income or loss. And 18, farm income or loss. So those three together. Oh, and that's also good to note, if you're filing for both your parents, Form 1040, line 37, you'd have to add up both of them for both of your parents. So basically these two should add up together. So again, same question, but for your mother or stepmother. As of today, is either of your parents a dislocated worker? No. Okay, and then next. Okay. Enter the amount of your parents' income tax for 2013. This amount is found on IRS Form 1040, line 55. So these are basically the taxes that they paid out. So line 55. So subtract line 54, etc. So basically the total of tax and credits. So I don't know, I'm just gonna put in a number that I'm guessing. Enter your parents' exemptions for 2013. This amount is found on IRS Form 1040, line 60. So scroll back up. So total number of exemptions claimed. So right here. So that's adding up your dependents, essentially, it looks like. Okay. So your parents claim you and your siblings as dependents. I'm going to put 2 because my parents do. Did your parents have any of the following items in 2013? Check all that apply, provide amounts. So additional financial information. So these were those extra expenses. So this looks like the other forms of tax income that aren't included on your W-2 and your 1040, like I explained earlier. So if any of these apply, I don't think any of these apply to my parents. So untaxed income, which is, you know, again, what we talked about earlier. Child support received. I don't think any of those apply to my parents. As of today, does the total amount of your parents' current assets exceed $39,700? So this is why you need to know about your assets. You need to know the total amount of your assets combined. So I'm gonna say no. So for 2013, have you completed your IRS tax return or another tax return? So it looks like you go into your parents' financials and then you go into your financials. So it looks like you go into your parents' financials and then the next step is your financials. So for 2013, no. You will file, or if you already have, you can say that you already have. Students can also use the IRS data retrieval tool if they've already turned in their information, their tax return. So for 2013, what will be your tax filing status according to your tax return? Single. Hopefully, I don't know. I'm single. So student financial information. So again, it starts out the exact same way. So what income tax return? I'm going to say a 1040 again. And it looks like it's the exact same. I don't know, maybe 1,000 in a year. Working at Jason's Deli. during the summer, maybe. How much did you earn from working in 2013? Again, I'm gonna say 1,000. So next, because I had no other forms of income, so enter the amount of your income tax for 2013. This amount is found on IRS 1040, line 55. I'm gonna say probably 300. So again, the total amount of taxes that you paid. Enter your exemptions. Boop. I doubt I had any exemptions. And none of these, I didn't have any other sources of taxable income or any untaxed income. Okay. So current balance of cash, savings, and checking accounts. When I graduated high school, I don't know, probably 2,000. As of today, what is the net worth of your investments, including real estate, etc.? Boop. Nada. As of today, what is the net worth of your current businesses or farms? We don't have any. Okay, so then after that, once you filled out all of your financial information, pretty much any errors that the system can detect will pop up, but it won't catch everything, obviously. So now the last thing that you have to do is just sign it. So, it asks, are you a preparer? So if anybody, like a third party who's filling out the FAFSA for somebody, hopefully none of us are preparers. So I can say no, and then student social security number, have that input, student's last name, student's date of birth, and then you sign with your PIN. And then remember, if you're a dependent student, you will need your parent also to sign this. They can either put in the same information if they have a PIN, but if they don't have a PIN, like I said before, you can click this other options to sign. You can print the signature page and then sign it and send it to the Department of Education via mail. Snail mail, via snail mail, snail mail. So obviously mine isn't real, so I'm not gonna submit it. Once you've electronically submitted the FAFSA, what you need to do is make sure that you have copies of all of the forms that we talked about. Keep them in a folder with your FAFSA, print out this FAFSA so you know what you actually handed in, and save it all. Also, what you need to do, like I said, if you estimated your finances because you haven't filled out your tax returns yet, once you have filled them out, you need to go back in here and either manually input the correct information, or you can use that IRS data retrieval tool. So after you've submitted it and you've updated all this information, etc., what will happen is the Department of Education will process it, look it over, and also send it to the schools that you're applying to that you had in your list. And then if any problems arise, they will inform you. They'll either send it to that email address that you had or in this FAFSA portal, but you need to be sure that you check up on that. Essentially what will happen if they don't send their student aid report that's supposed to come 3 to 5 days after you fill this out, something's up. So if you don't get that quickly, you need to double check and be like, ooh, what's going on? Something's probably wrong. I need to figure this out. A lot of people end up forgetting about it and then missing their deadlines because they're like, oh crap, last minute I filed it, but something was wrong, so it didn't go all the way through. If you do find out that you input something incorrectly, you can easily log back on and just make a few changes and then resubmit. It doesn't take that much. But I would say that if you can't figure out exactly what's wrong, talk to somebody, ask some questions, get some feedback before you spend all this time sending it in, getting it back, sending it in, getting it back. It'll just save a lot of time. Also, lastly, the big thing to note is that you fill out the FAFSA every year that you're in college. You have to reapply for financial aid because it depends on your parents' income, on your income and your assets, everything. So that changes by year. So your FAFSA changes by year. But don't give up. If the first year you don't get very much financial aid, realize that those circumstances really can completely change the federal aid amount that you get, especially like if your younger sibling starts attending college. That's a big factor that changes your financial aid. Really do it each year, because the only way you're for sure not gonna get anything is if you don't turn it in. But yeah, that's all that I have for today. Make sure to like the video if you liked it. If you have any questions, I know this was a lot of information, please be sure to leave them down in the comments below. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter and Pinterest at College Uncomp. Also subscribe to College Uncomplicated to see more videos of our financial aid bootcamp. But that's it. I hope you had a good time filling out the FAFSA. I'll see you next week. Bye!